Henry David Thoreau said, "The world is but a canvas to our imagination." The world is but a canvas to our imagination. I've shared that one with you before, but it is so important and so powerful. I wanted to remind you once again that our imaginations are truly an empowering part of our creative process. Welcome to Creative Spirit Gathering. This is your place for using an art journal for exploring and expressing what is on your mind and heart. I am your host, Reverend Jen Hutchins, founder of Unity Arts Ministry. Today, we are continuing with our theme of surface design, and we'll be talking about how to use grids in artistic work. So sort of a non-traditional grid going on here, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in our session together today. Creative Spirit Gathering is offered on a love offering basis, so your donations help to make this program possible. You can give online at unityartsministry.org. I thank you in advance for your gifts. All right, friends, so I want to give you an upfront that today, anything goes in your journal. I'm going to be sharing with you several different ways that you can work with today's theme of grids, sharing from my own journal, created within the past few months. I've noticed that several grid forms have shown up in my journals. And I realized that one of the reasons why that happened is because the grid is like this nice structured form, right? It helps to create a sense of balance, of logic, of organizing thoughts on the page. And I tell you, when life gets crazy and chaotic and like all over the place, the grid is a beautiful way to work in your journal to simplify and to organize all of that external chaos or that internal chaos that might be happening in your mind. So chaos, yeah. Have you been there ever? Like maybe not this week, but maybe this week. I've been there this week, a lot of ups and downs, and realizing, how easily I've been swayed by external circumstances. And I found myself, in that place, trying to find comfort when external circumstances aren't going the way that I expect them to. When life hits me with surprises and things that trigger emotions, it can be easy for us as human beings, right, to sort of get lost in that swirl of what's happening. And sometimes it's really important for us just to slow down and do nothing, right? Practice self-care. That's such a big part of it. And again, turning to our art journals is in fact a form of self-care. It is a place where we can simply presence and process whatever is coming up for us and give it a place to rest. And in doing that, in that rest, we find what it is that we want to create, right? Sometimes once we sort of get that muck out, and we can do that on the page, and then we realize, there's the muck. That's not what I want. What I do want is, right? We get that clarity to move into what do I want. And this can happen for us, whether we are dumping on our journal or sharing with a good friend, right? Sometimes we might have a friend where we can call them up or go for a walk, get out in the woods, go for a hike, and just release all of what's going on for us. It's important that we have somebody, that we can release with. And again, our journal can be that companion for us, maybe when we can't get in person with somebody and share with them. I recently had the opportunity to go for a hike with a good friend. Hello, good friend. Sitting on the other side of the room from me now. And during our hike, right, we both were just sharing, and this has happened and that has happened. They're waving at you. And we get back to the car, ready to head back home. And then we stood in the parking lot and talked for another hour after our hour-long hike. Do you have friends you can do that with? I hope so. I hope you have friends you can do that with. And during that time, right, we moved from that release that was happening during our walk to talking about, okay, well, these things maybe aren't working, but what do we want? What do we want? And so I asked her, okay, that's not going, what do you want? And she thought about that for a little while, and there were a few different things, that came up. And the one that came through the clearest, and just as we were about to hop into the car, was what I really want is laughter. What I really want is laughter. So we both went home, went our separate ways, and maybe an hour later, I get a text that she had taken her dogs for a walk after getting home. And one of the neighbor's children was outside playing and ran up to her and said, hi, and introduced himself and said, I'm a snake, what are you? And she said, I'm a monkey. And he said, oh my gosh, a monkey? Wow, I've never met a monkey before. And he ran back up the stairs to his mom and said, Mom, that lady with the dogs is a monkey. And so laughter fulfilled. Laughter fulfilled. What do you want? When we put it out there, it might only take 20 minutes for the universe to provide what it is that we're focusing on. And we can do that, right? We can focus on when this goes wrong and that goes wrong and that goes wrong. Have you been there? And it just keeps getting worse and worse. The story Alexander and the horrible, no good, very bad day comes to mind. Just one thing after another goes wrong, goes wrong, goes wrong. So imagine if we were to simply focus on that all the time. We get bubblegum stuck in our hair and it'd be a mess. But we can use that same power, that creative power, to create laughter in our lives, to create joy in our lives, to create more of what it is that we are looking for in our lives. And a grid format in our art journal can be such an easy way of just looking at, what do I want, right? Consider it like a love letter to yourself or a love letter to the universe. What do I want? And we can do that sort of in list form. We could do it with pictures. We can do it with mixed media messes, right? Processing, what don't I want? What do I want? And exploring those ideas on the page. Now, grid, right? I mean, the wall behind me is a grid. It's any sort of regular structure. It might be rectangular or squares, right? We often think of square grids. And when it comes to creativity and the arts, a lot of times artists are using invisible grids in their work. So we might see things that are like depicted as squares, but we might also notice that things are balanced on the page. And that's because the artist has a sense of this grid that's dividing the page up behind everything, right? So we can use the grid format to sort of hang things in space. We often see this with graphic design work, with say like a poster or a magazine cover or a book cover. You're going to see sort of pockets of squares in different positions that sort of holds the vision of the viewer sort of on that flat surface, but it makes it easy to read, easy to process all of these different ideas that might not have a similarity, but they are easy to bring together because of how they're visually represented. So when you're writing your love list, what do I want? It might be that there's different categories that you're looking at. And so you can use a grid to kind of break up these different thoughts or ideas. What do I want for my career? What do I want for my creativity? What do I want in relationships? We could have boxes or grids, grid-like areas. As I said, it doesn't have to be an exact square or rectangle. I'm going to share with you a few different journal pages that are in this current journal that I'm working on. Some of them you might recognize as ones that we've done in class over the past year. If you want to come look. So this first one here is one that we did a while back on storyboarding, and this one is an obvious example of a grid, right? The page is divided into equal squares, well, mostly equal squares. And this was done with sort of doodle drawing and colored pencil. And I share this to you intentionally to say the word doodle to you. There are stick figures on this page. So for those of you who say, yeah, but I can't draw stick figures, you can do stick figures. Anybody can do stick figures. They are certainly allowable. Another example of grids here, this was an activity from the Artist's Way. So you can see I've got these boxes on the right-hand side there that break up the page into different categories. And this was just a written activity. So again, you don't have to do any drawing at all. It could be a written list. What do you want in different areas? And one more, and here's one that might be a little more of an abstract grid where you're not necessarily seeing equal division here, but there are still sort of gridded spaces in this magazine collage. So lots of different ways that you can explore with grids on the page. And the one that I was sharing with you earlier is this one here. And this one is done with mixed media. I actually wrote in the background here. And here's another cool story about putting forward what we do want, focusing our energy on what we want. I realized, again, just with a lot that's been going on in my personal life, that things were feeling right out of my control. And so what I wanted most was comfort. And I had found myself, watching things on Netflix, just like random, whatever things. And I realized, if I'm really wanting to create comfort for myself, I should watch some things that are a little more inspirational, things that might lift me up. And so I chose to watch a show that was sort of a narrative of the life of Jesus, little like storylines, snippets of different stories that we might see in the Gospels. And I was watching one and it got to a section on where Jesus meets a Samaritan woman by the well. For those of you who aren't familiar with this passage, essentially he tells her, he sees her gathering water and he's like, hey, you want to give me a drink? She's like, really? Like, would you even want a drink from me, like a woman? And I'm like, Samaritan, and you're a Jew, and are you sure? And he's like, if you knew who I was, you'd be asking me for a drink and I would give you water. And when you drank that water, you would never thirst again. You'd never thirst again. Now, I was sitting here watching this story while eating cheesy popcorn, like one of my comfort foods, realizing that I was looking to media and to food and to all these other things, trying to find comfort. And Jesus says, if you were to drink this water, you would never thirst again. And I realized, that comfort that I'm seeking is spiritual comfort. It's not going to be found in my popcorn or the movie or anything else. And about that same time, my computer shut down. It ran out of batteries and it just shut down in the middle of this like parable being played out on the screen in front of me. And so I turned it off and I thought, I'm going to go journal, right? And since I had been watching this story, I decided I'm going to flip open my Bible to a random page and I'm going to use that passage to write text on my journal, just to give some texture in the background and to give me sort of that, again, that foundation, that spiritual foundation coming into it. Randomly flipped open a page to guess what story? The story of Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman by the well. That story, I'm getting chills remembering that moment. So I had to look. There's 1,452 pages in that particular Bible that I was using. And I flipped to the story that I was just watching. I don't know If it was, the power of the imagination, the power of my thoughts made that page show forward for me. If it was spirit itself reminding me this is the message that you need right now. I don't even know, in that moment, I was so amazed, so amazed. All I do know was that spirit was present with me. And I know that for each of you, spirit is present with you, no matter what has been going on in your life yesterday, earlier today, whatever you have planned for tomorrow, spirit is with you, and we can tap into that. And when I took the moment, right, to say, I'm going to make some creative expression around what I need right now, and spirit is my foundation, spirit's where I'm going to start this with, I was reminded of that gift of spirit present with me. And so I used charcoal to write the parable out underneath my page, painted everything in blue. I added some gesso on here. I used a stencil to create these circles, and I created them using a wax-based medium. So when I hit the whole thing with gesso, they stayed, and I was so excited by how well that came out. So I had this sort of gridded pattern, and I knew before I even opened the Bible, what I wanted on my page was the word believe. And after that experience, that was for sure for me, that reminder that it is okay to believe, right? It is okay to have faith, even in those times of challenge. And again, that gridded structure, just being present with the process for me really was comforting. That was like one of the most comforting experiences I had all week. And so I'm inviting you today to use your journal to focus on, what do you want? What is your foundation? What are the things that you're wanting to create? The world is but a canvas to our imagination. So what will we create? Laughter? Spiritual comfort? What is it that you're going to create? As we think about that idea, I'm going to lead us into a time of meditation before we move onto the page to explore and express from our hearts. So I invite you to take a moment to center your body, adjust yourself in your seat, roll your shoulders if you need to. Take a deep breath and gently let your eyes fall closed. Take a deep breath in and exhale, letting the body relax. And bring your awareness to your mind, to the thoughts that are happening. Whatever emotions might be presencing in your mind, it's ideas, thoughts right now. Take a moment to notice, and then take a breath and just ask them all to relax. Have a seat. Be still. And as we still the mind, we bring our awareness to our heart center. Notice the light, the peace. On the next inhale, let us move even more fully into the awareness of the heart center as we rest here for a moment of silence. You may wish to ask, what does your heart want to create? attention to any ideas or thoughts or words that come to mind. And take them with you as we gently bring our awareness up from the heart to our minds, back to the awareness of the body in this moment, right here, right now. We gently flutter our eyes open and give a moment of gratitude for this opportunity to express from our hearts onto the page. Enjoy your process, my friends.